Dodge this.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules and controls, without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
One world currency.
The New World Order.
Those are the roots of trouble.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole? Let me tell you why you're here. You're here because you know something. What you know you can't explain, but you feel it. You felt it your entire life. That there's something wrong with the world. You don't know what it is, but it's there, like a splinter in your mind, driving you mad. It is this feeling that has brought you to me. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed. But I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people.
And now, welcome to another episode of Down the Rabbit Hole. Here's your host from federaljack.com. It's Popeye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another live edition of DTRH. It is November 14th, 2014. Now, today's show is it's going to be a little bit raw. You guys might hear me break up a little bit on air, but I think I wouldn't be a human being if you didn't hear the truth. You didn't hear the real me, right? If I came on air trying to pretend, I wouldn't be doing my wife any justice. So, as many of you know, this is the first time I've been live on air since the unfortunate passing of my wife, my beautiful wife, Merce. Today marks the actual 1-month anniversary of the asthma attack that robbed me and the rest of the world of her beautiful presence. And I thought it would be fitting to come back on air tonight, and I knew I had to address this. I knew the first time coming back live would be a bit rough, and I knocked the rust off the joints by going on Joe's show last night. And I just hung out with Joe and Kev and Aaron and Melissa and the rest of the crew over there. All those guys, they're all, and Melissa and Gwen, they're just absolutely great friends. Chris, Cherie, Joe, Ange. So I knocked the rust off, but I knew that tonight would be an emotional broadcast because I'm going to talk about Merce. I'm going to... the title of the show is, I do subtitles for each show, right? Especially for the older listeners. To people that are just tuning in for the first time, I always give my shows a title for the archives and for YouTube and stuff. So, the title of the show is The Legacy of Merce. Merce was a once-in-a-lifetime woman. She was... I can't even think of one simple word that I could sum her up in. That's how awesome she was, that there isn't a word for her. After tonight, some of you that don't know her at all, or some of you that know her from the past but don't know who she became or who she really was inside, you'll have a better understanding of her. It's the only proper way I could honor her. Would be to come on and inspire you all with how she lived her life. Because there was always a perception of her by some people that was inaccurate. And the reason I want to present not only the info about who she really was, not just to show people who she really was, but also to show people that, just like with her life, what she did, she used to make people feel that it was okay, and I'll get into this, about the things that they went through, and that she had been through experiences too, and it was okay that you had been through those experiences, and she made people feel comfortable with themselves again so that they could actually start to heal from these experiences. And those of you out there who might feel the same way, or feel that you're in the same thing, the same type of situation, maybe you can learn and pull something positive from how she dealt with things and handled things. So, I'm sure many of you have had this experience, and we all do this. Our perceptions of people are usually drastically different than what that person really actually is inside. And that's a combination of us judging them and what that person allows you to see. And a lot of the times what that person allows you to see is also related to, how much they've been judged, right? It's kind of this vicious circle. So hopefully you can see that she went through some horrible things in her life. I'm not going to go through what she went through, but you'll have an understanding that even though she went through some tough times, because she went through some rough things in her life, she was still able to always find the positive side of things and try to push others to do so as well. She used to sit and counsel her students after yoga and talk to them. She could be having the worst day in the world. Her and I could have had an argument right before she went into yoga class. She'd go and teach the most amazing yoga class because she'd use that energy of being mad at me and she'd take it out on the students. But afterwards, for like 20, 30 minutes, she would sit with them and talk to them and go. So it didn't matter. We could, she could be, the world could be ending in her world, and it didn't matter. She always had time for somebody else. She always had time to sit and just listen and make somebody feel that it was okay that what they were going through, the experience itself, even if it was a messed up experience. It wasn't okay if someone did something bad to them and that was the experience, but it was okay that they went through it. You weren't bad just because you went through it, because that's a feeling of guilt that many people experience. And a lot of times it's built up by the people around you that you think are they're supposed to support you, and that people don't realize, because we'll get into about communication and everything, but they make it worse. She was one of those individuals that she would make it okay for you to be you. She just accepted you. She didn't judge. And hopefully after tonight, besides hearing things like that and other stuff I'm going to share with you and get into a little bit more detail, hopefully maybe she will inspire you to be a better person. Because after all, if you really want the world to change, you need to be the change. And that was actually Merce's favorite quote. Be the change you wish to see in the world. And she actually lived her life like that. So, let's pick up where I want to begin with this. Now, she lived her life to the fullest. She lived her life her way. And she had had a rougher time when she was younger, we'll say. And she had overcome many things in her life. And she did so on her own. Now, regardless of whatever struggles they were, the fact that she overcame them was impressive by itself. What was even more impressive was when I saw her turn around and focus her, change. I mean, she was already always taking care of people, but she focused a huge portion of her energy in her life into helping others come to the realization that she had and helping them cross that same bridge that she had crossed. Coming to grips with things, whatever it was, disease, sickness, personal problems, their past, maybe things they did in the past. She did it not only through yoga, but she did it also by sitting and listening to them. Sometimes she would be 45 minutes to an hour late getting home from work, and I'd be like, I'd call her, "You okay? Everything all right?" Yeah, I was just sitting in class with the students. She didn't have to do that. She didn't get paid for that. She would sit there and listen to them and just not judge them, nothing. Just listen to them speak. She would just listen. She wouldn't judge them. That's the key thing. She wouldn't judge. She didn't turn around and she didn't, if someone said, I used to do drugs back in the day and, I did a lot of hardcore stuff and I don't do that anymore, but, I used to and I still have, guilt and my family makes me feel bad for it and it's constantly getting thrown in my face and I'm constantly being judged for it. She would make that person feel okay with having gone through that experience, and she would sit and talk to them and just let them speak and, get out how they felt. And then she would give them whatever advice accordingly, whatever she was coming from. But she just listened. She didn't judge. You know how hard that is for people not to do? I think about it. I want you to go out and try for a week to not judge people. Let's see if you can actually do it. Watch what happens in your own personal life. You'll be judging everybody left and right. It's what we do, right? You have to literally, and we've been programmed. I know some of that, I guess you could say, might be human nature, but a lot of that is programming, and we have to learn to get past that, which is communication, which I'll get into later on. But she didn't judge. She just let people be themselves. She didn't bust anybody's balls. She didn't make fun of somebody because they were different. She didn't hate on them. She was just her. She listened. She opened her ears. She just let them be them. She was one soul letting another soul express itself. The true meaning of namaste. The divine light in me salutes the divine light in you. She actually lived her life the way that she talked and spoke. I don't think people understood that about her in many ways. And the problem is we don't understand that about each other. It's not just with her. It's with all of us. Everybody goes through that in their life where they don't feel understood by the people around them, right? She was good at breaking through that and letting you know that there are people that understand. And by you hearing me speak about her, by you hearing me talk about the person she really was and still is wherever we go when we leave here, maybe things will change for you. But you have to apply it too. It's not just like you're going to hear me talk about her and instantly your life is going to change. You have to apply that. Again, you have to be the change that you wish to see. Do you wish your life to get better? Are you going to sit around on your ass and not doing anything all day? Maybe play video games? Maybe not get a job? Maybe watch TV? Maybe not do anything? Maybe just sit around? Or are you going to get up and try to do something? Even if something doesn't come your way, are you going to at least try? Because that's all that matters, is that you actually, even if it doesn't work out, you took that step. That was the most important part, was taking that initial step, right? Taking that leap of faith almost. That was that important part. You know, a lot of people would say to me, and they said this to me since she passed, Merce was so fearless. She wasn't fearless, because there is no such thing as being fearless. It exists. Okay? My wife had fears. She mastered her fears. I said this before on the show. The true mastery of fear is when you know you're afraid and you still overcome it and continue to do what you need to do. That's mastery of fear. Understanding it, knowing your fear, but still facing it and overcoming it. And that's what she did. Every day of her life. That's how she lived her life. And she inspired many people to do the same. I'm going to read you some stuff that I was sent by one of her students, which is pretty touching. I'm going to tell you some stories about how she lived. I challenge you to go out and be better people. If you need a reason why, do it for her. Do it in honor of my wife. If you respect me the way so many people say they do, and you want to honor my wife, then go out and be better people in this world and change the world for a better place. If you want to honor my beautiful Merce, then you go out and you be the change that you wish to see in the world, because that's what she would want. She wouldn't want you to be curled up in a ball, crying in fear in your home. She wouldn't want you to be afraid. She wouldn't want you to be scared of ISIS or the boogeyman or whatever else was going to hop out of the closet supposedly at you, because that's not how she lived her life. And she expected everybody else to act accordingly. It used to make her angry with the amount of fear porn that's out there. Absolutely used to anger her. She wasn't in this. She didn't do this type. I mean, she went and did activism with me when I dragged her out to street actions. There's videos of her, but or she's volunteered a few times to go translate for us. But she changed things on her own way, in her own. You know, she did things in her own path. That's one of the things I respected about her. I always gave her enough space to be herself, and she gave me enough space to be mine. And yet we were still two pieces of a puzzle that were cut for one another. I respected her individuality. That's why, although she wasn't a really well-known activist, she was very well-known in the yoga community, and she helped people. She healed people. I met some of her students at the memorial service we had for her last week in South Florida, and impressed isn't even a good enough word. And I already knew a lot of stuff because she would sit and I mean, I knew everything. I was kind of like her. I was her best friend. She's mine, so she told me everything, and I mean everything. And I knew all the conversations she had with her students and stuff. But I don't even think she realized the way people felt about her, which I'll get into. I'll be dispensing some advice later, so about a few things from my new perspective. But she changed the world for a lot of people. In fact, I want to read to you guys a letter that was sent to me. If I can find it here, I have it right here to pull it out. I have a printed out version of it. I scanned it to put it up on. It's on Facebook if you guys want to go see it. And it was a letter that was sent to me by one of her students, and I got it about 3 or 4 days ago, and I'll try to read it without crying. Hopefully I can make through it. Every time I read it so far, every time I've ever read it, I haven't been able to get through it without tearing up, so we'll see. So, it says, I'm so sorry for the loss of your wonderful wife. I only knew Maria, and so people understand, if you hear me refer to her as Maria or Merce, her name was Maria Mercedes. She went by Mercedes, but she didn't like being called Mercedes, so she went by Merce. But when she came over here from Puerto Rico, she used to joke that she said, you friggin' gringos can't ever say my name right, and she was right. People would call her Murky or Mercy, or they just wouldn't, whatever other interesting combinations they'd have of her name. So it was just easier for them to say Maria. So a lot of people here in South Florida knew her as Maria. So if you hear me read anything or mention her with the name Maria in it, you understand that I'm talking about the same person. My best friend, my lovely, beautiful wife, Merce. So anyway, back to the beginning of the letter. I am so sorry for the loss of your wonderful wife. I only knew Maria for a short couple of months, but in that short time, she changed my life. I was suffering with postpartum depression and in the slow process of recovery, but attending Maria's class magically saved me. I had tried other yoga teachers, but I was not successful in their classes. Somehow Maria got through to me. I learned more from her in 2 months than the past 10 years. Suddenly, her yoga classes were my favorite part of the week. Although I was happy for her big move, because we moved out of the area, I was sad to lose the most unbelievable teacher. I still hope she will magically show up and be a substitute for a class or two. So I'm writing not to bring about more sadness, but to reinforce how much she was loved. She helped rescue me, and I will never forget her. I miss her every time I attend a class, but I do know that one day I will be attending her class in heaven. With deepest sympathies, and then she signs it, and for her privacy, I won't read her name on air. That would be rude, but it was one of her. My wife used to teach yoga at LA Fitness. She taught at multiple gyms, and that was was a letter from one of her students. So, as you can see, and I mean, if you go by the rule, if that's one person that reached out, how many more haven't reached out? And believe me, I've had plenty of people reach out via text or phone, because one of her friends in the yoga class, that attended some of her yoga classes, I know her. I met her before this, months before, so I know her. And she's like my conduit to her students. So she was able to give out my phone number and my address and stuff to some of the students, and that's how this lady was able to reach out to me. So, as you can see, just because my wife was who she was and how she taught her class, and the fact that she sat and she talked to this lady. And I know, I remember, if this is the same lady I'm thinking of, I remember Merce telling me about her and talking to me. And not telling me details or whatever, but just, chatting with me, telling me things here and there, filling me in. And she never bragged that she saved this lady or anything like that, or she did that. She would just say that, oh, this poor lady, she would tell me about what was going on, and that's who she was talking to, and that was it. Because we would chat, but because I would pick her brain and, what were you doing, blah, 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 and then she would pick my brain, and we'd go back and forth, have these little conversations. As many of you who are lucky enough to actually be married to somebody that you can consider your best friend, you'd understand what I'm talking about, the conversations you have. So I knew that this stuff went on, but I don't think she understood the profound effect she had on people's lives. And she didn't care. Not that she didn't want to change people, she just didn't care for notoriety. It's not why she did it. She wasn't the kind of person that ran around going, hey, I just helped somebody out. Quite the opposite. She wouldn't talk about it at all. And people would just assume. People judged the book by the cover often. In fact, more often than not. As we do with each other. Every day, all day. And again, I bring that up not as oh, poor her, but to show you that, look, I'm sure you're going through the same thing in your life, many of you out there. And yet, look at the beautiful things that she still did. She didn't let that stop her. She could have just curled up into a ball and stopped, but she didn't. And she suffered from seizures. I mean, I've seen her have a couple hundred seizures at least in front of me. And she would still step up to the plate. It could have been, an hour or two after her seizure, and if she was level-headed and clear, she'd want to do something for somebody else and help them out. Or she'd be thinking about somebody else. I mean, literally, she could have had a seizure, and 2 hours later, she'd be worried about somebody else's problems that she knows. Trying to come up with a solution for them. Always thinking of everybody first but herself. Literally being the change. Stay tuned. More of the Legacy of Merce. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. So, as I was saying when we were going into the break, my wife, my beautiful Merce, she didn't ask for praise. I'm going to share a little story with you. I posted this on Facebook a couple weeks ago. And there's an interesting caveat to this story, which I will share with you when I'm done. I first met Merce when we worked at a tattoo shop together. Well, we worked for the same owners. The owners had 5 shops at the time. I think now that's down to 4, but I think they consolidated to 4, or 3. But they had 5 shops at the time. And 2 of them were on South Beach in Miami. It's about 8 years ago. And, yeah, well, no, we were together 9 years, so 9 years ago. So, she worked in one and I worked in the other. And we met, got together, whatever, started dating. And we lived in, I had a small studio apartment, and we lived there for about a month. It was not, it was not fitting for 2 people living together. It was like 700 square feet. It was just too small. So we got one that wasn't really much bigger, but it was a 1-bedroom, so it was sectioned off a little bit better. And across the hall from us was this little old lady. This little old Cuban lady. And she lived all by herself. She had family, but they were, like most families, a lot of times you see these people with, they have older relatives. They leave them by themselves. They forget about them. One of the the spouses in the relationship passes. And in this case, this little old lady was a widow. And she lived by herself, and she was getting up there. She was like late 80s, like mid to late 80s, easily. And I'm not saying people in their 80s that might be tuned in, oh my God, you're old. But she was older, and her body was starting to show, aging, So, and I mean like wear and tear wise, like more physically, like it was harder for her to do things. So her kids would come over, I don't know, once a month, maybe twice a month. And they really didn't do anything for her. They were kind of just, we got the vibe from her, or from them. And Merce later on, I guess from speaking to the old lady even felt this way, that they were just waiting for her to die so that they could have her place and all of her money in her checking account and stuff like that. So, and whatever else she had, which I don't know how much she had. She was living by herself, and she was very meager means, but who knows, Some of these old people, they end up having $100,000 in the bank, and they live like that. Anyway, so she was by herself. Nobody was really taking care of her. And little did I know that for probably about a good, say, month or two at least before I found out, Merce was going over there a couple times a week. And she was doing her laundry. She was washing dishes. She was cooking for her. Now, that may not sound like a big deal to some of you. Like, oh, okay, she was doing a nice thing. But I always interject a little bit of humor and say, yeah, you would have had to have understood and know my wife, and anybody that did would know that she didn't like doing laundry. She didn't like cleaning, and she certainly didn't like cooking. Although she did cook. I was the cook in the household. That was my thing. I liked to cook, and I loved to cook for her. Because she loved she loved and appreciated my food. So she was doing all this stuff. Like I used to joke when I found out. I said to her, I can't get you to do the dishes in our house, but you're doing her dishes. And she was like, "Were you mad?" And I said, No. I'm just making a funny. It's just a joke. I think it's awesome that you're doing that. And I did. I was very proud of her. That she did that, because she didn't even tell me. The only reason why it ended up coming up was because eventually they were all condos. It wasn't like an apartment complex. It was condos that the owners rented out. And she had owned this condo, and she didn't have a maintenance guy. She couldn't afford, I guess, to pay somebody to be her maintenance guy. And she needed a few things done to the apartment, and Merce knew I knew how to do that stuff. So she came and said, "Can you please help this old lady?" And I said, "Yeah, but how do you know that, like, what's up?" And she's like, "Oh, I've been helping her out for a while." And I didn't realize, but what she was doing was she would go to the store if she needed to go to the store or whatever, or go to work. And on her way, we worked 5 or 6 days a week, depending on the schedule. So she would stop on her way to work to see what this little old lady needed, if she needed anything. And she would tell her, "Look, I worked 12 hours today, but I think it was 45 minutes or an hour break. I can't remember what it was." And she would, a lot of times on her break, she would go to the store, pick up what she needed, what the little old lady needed, okay? And I don't mean like she'd get money from the little old lady. She would use my wife worked and paid, was busting her butt. And then she used the money out of her pocket and went and bought this lady groceries if she needed stuff, and then would drop it off to her, and then help her put stuff away and put it away in the fridge. She would do her dishes, help her with the laundry. She said to me when I asked her, I said, "What made you do that?" Not that I didn't think it was awesome, but what was like, I mean, there had to be something where like it built up and finally, like, what was it? And she said, when I saw that, because I forget what had happened. I think she was walking by one day, and the door was cracked open. And the lady was sitting in there, and I think when people would walk by, she was talking, but she spoke Spanish. She didn't really speak English. And Merce heard her, this was like, I don't know, the first couple weeks we were there, and Merce had heard her, I guess, like saying, trying to get people's attention. And that's when she went and checked in and realized that this little lady had nobody checking in on her, and it infuriated her. And she told me it pissed her off because it reminded her of her grandmother. And she said, "I would be so livid if somebody didn't take care of my grandma. How could these people not do that? How could they not care about their family?" I mean, this woman wasn't even her blood, and she was infuriated that they were not taking care of her. So she said, I'm going to do it. And I think she even, I don't remember, I could be wrong, but I think, and knowing my wife, this is probably accurate, I think she might have even told off one of the sons in the hallway at some point in time while we were there. I can't remember accurately. I don't want to say for sure she did, but I have this feeling, I just have this feeling and this memory that she did, because she was really heated and pissed about it, and that's the person she was. She was about 5'2", 5'2 and a half, but man, you'd think she was 6'8" and 350 pounds. She had courage, like more. She had more courage in her little pinky finger than most men have in their entire bodies. And she just took care of this little old lady because it was the right thing to do. She didn't take care of her because she wanted notoriety. It's not like she did it and then came to me and said, "Look, honey, look what I did." She didn't even tell me, and she was, we were dating, we were living together. So I knew a lot of things, but she didn't tell me because I said to her, "Why didn't you tell me?" And she was like, "Well, it wasn't really a big deal. It was just, I was doing it. I didn't want you to get all, uppity about it. I didn't know how you would take it. I didn't know if you'd be weird about it." Because remember, we had just started dating only a couple months before, so we're still learning about one another. And I told her I was in absolute awe of her as a human being that she would do that, and I was, and that was the beauty that was Merce. I mean, you didn't expect that. If you knew her, you'd understand why I would say that, because if you knew her in your personal life, she was tough. My wife had a foul mouth. The things that would come out of her mouth sometimes would astonish people, but that's why I fell in love with her. That's one of the things that made me fall in love with her, was her mouth and the things that would come out of it. I was just impressed by her. She was a female version of me. She was the only person on this planet that I can categorically, without a shadow of a doubt, tell you that was my equal. She could hold her own with me, okay? She could take me on. She could hold her own with me. We used to joke and say that she used to call me her puzzle piece. That was her nickname for me, one of her many. But we used to call each other our puzzle pieces, because we used to say we were made for each other. We were, two pieces of a much larger puzzle, but we were made to connect. She balanced me out. She taught me a lot. It's one of the reasons that you all got to know her somewhat, because I talked about her on air quite often. She used to get mad, actually. She used to say, I'd get off air and I'd be like, "Hey, hon, I talked about you on air again tonight." And she used to get mad, and she'd be like, what do you mean you talked about me? Because she was, a private person, and I would say, I didn't say anything, that I know what should be kept private, but there were just certain things I would use, little examples, little vague things here and there. I would just mention how awesome she was and how much fun I was having with her. And she got a kick out of the fact that the listeners, you guys, would all call her Mrs. Popeye, and that I referred to her as Mrs. Popeye. She got quite the kick out of that. In fact, to answer some people's questions, they've asked me if she knew me as Popeye. Yes, she actually, when she met me, she didn't know my real name. She met me first as Popeye, and she would tell people that then she knew my real name. But it's funny, some of her friends were like, "His name is what?" I think even her mom was like, "What? His name is what?" I'm sure that had to be interesting. But my wife was not judgmental. She didn't make fun of my name. She thought it was interesting, to say the least. She was always supportive of me doing this radio show. She used to love the fact that I did Hangar 18. We were pretty close to getting her to come on, because she would have fit right in. You think I tear Joe up? It would have been 2 hours of her and Joe going at it. Merce was a blast. So she could have fun and hold her own. She could take on Joe and myself at the same time verbally in a verbal battle and beat us both down, at the same time be as gentle of a flower as she was that she went and took care of that little old lady, or helped that lady in her class with postpartum depression, or all of the other thousands of people that she helped out in this world. Okay, she lived her life. She wasn't, afraid to live her life. She wasn't afraid to be herself. She wasn't afraid to experience things, but at the same time, she still made sure that she had enough time to change the world for a better place. I mean, she literally, she knew that the only proper way to do it, it wasn't like she said, I'm going to allocate 5 hours this week to be a better person. No, she just lived her life in that fashion that she was a better person. She didn't need to go out and validate herself by patting herself on the back and telling people what she did so that people could give her a hug or a high five. She did it because she saw the positive change that she made. That's why she did it. Now, sometimes she would give the homeless people $1 or $2, but usually what she would do is she'd go buy them a slice of pizza. She would do what I did. And she used to tell me, because she would see me do stuff like that, and she would say, she saw me help little old ladies out across the street and stuff, and she would say, that's why I love you. Because you're really a big sweetie on the inside. Because, I might come off like a prick sometimes or whatnot, or whatever. But she saw me get out of the car to help little old ladies across the street and stuff like that, and she did the same thing. As tough as she was, she would do things like that. She didn't do it because she wanted me to know, or she wanted her mom to know, or her sister. There's a lot of people that didn't know any of these stories about her. She could have told people. She could have posted it on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. She didn't. She just lived her life. She walked the walk. She didn't just talk the talk. She didn't go around saying, be the change you want to see in the world, and then not do it. No. She said, be the change that you wish to see in this world, and then she went out and actually walked that path. It's your perspective on life, ladies and gentlemen, that needs to change. See, even going out and just buying a homeless person a meal, like once, and then going, well, I bought a homeless guy a meal like a month ago, Popeye. I did a good deed. You're not understanding the deeper level of the solution to the problem. It's about your perspective. It's about how you see the world. Because if you look at the world from a different perspective, things change drastically. You'll start to see different solutions that you didn't realize were there before because you weren't looking at it from that perspective. So do you want to stay and look at it from the perspective that you're looking at it and only do that one little simple thing? Or even if you did it once a week, but I feed homeless people once a week, Popeye. But okay, but you're not really getting my point. The fact that you're doing that is great, and continue to do that. But it's more than just that. It's about your perspective on life. It's about how you interact with your fellow human beings or the animals that you interact with on a daily basis. Okay? I'm not kidding. It's about a change of perspective, because she certainly had a different perspective on life than most people. And Merce had a very profound effect on those around her. There is not one person that I have met who she didn't leave a mark on their life. Whether it was good or bad depends on quite often how you handled yourself in the situation with her and how you presented yourself to her. But good or bad, she left a mark on you. Usually it was good. Like I said, I've said this before, anybody that really had a bad experience with my wife was probably intimidated by her because you could feel her energy. I mean, she could walk into a room and Merce could change the tone of the room in the blink of an eye. If she was pissed, you'd know it. But more often than not, she would walk in with a grin on her face from ear to ear. She had the most beautiful laugh you could ever hear. I said all the time, I've said it before on other broadcasts, my favorite sound in the world is her laughter. and it always will be. She had the most beautiful laugh. In fact, most people, the one big thing they remember about her is her laugh and her huge, beautiful smile. My wife was gorgeous. I could gush on her for hours. Anyway, not only was she physically beautiful, but she was also beautiful on the inside, her soul. She walked the walk, ladies and gentlemen, so I challenge you all out there to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. You have to change your perspective on things. You have to start to look at things from a different way. You have to stop reacting emotionally. You have to start thinking more logically. If you really want to be the change that you wish to see in the world, then it's more than just going out and doing a good deed here or there. You have to think about the way you live your life, because even the smallest things that you do reverberate across time, ladies and gentlemen. And the good deeds, the way Merce lived her life on a daily basis, not on once a week, twice a week, on a daily basis. And it doesn't mean that you have to go out and physically buy somebody food or a homeless person food, and that's not just it. How about talking to somebody? Simply just talking to somebody or being there for somebody. Even if it's on Facebook. Actually being a real human friend, not just thumbs-upping something that they like. Maybe they post something and they sound depressed. Message them. Hey man, you okay? Need to talk? Spend 5 minutes talking to them. Maybe you'll build a friendship with that person even if you've never met them. And they'll be like, wow, someone cares. Just knowing that one other person on the planet gives a shit about what you're going through could change your whole perspective on things. Case in point, the story of the old lady that lived across the hall from us. I posted it on Facebook 2 weeks ago. This is the interesting caveat to that story. One of the listeners, and I saw this, it was on November 2nd of this year. I went on Chris and Cherie show. There's a video I put up on YouTube, and it's on Federal Jack. It's Being the Change for Merce. It's a snippet of that show that I was on. It's the section that I was on, and it's on YouTube and federaljack.com. And if you go to the downloadable archive section on federaljack.com, and in the beginning of the second hour, I'll get into how to use all that stuff really quick for like 2 minutes. But for the new people that are just tuning in, they want to maybe go back and listen to my shows. You can go listen to the Being the Change for Merce episode, which I urge you to do. Go listen to it. But it's about changing your perspective. So that Sunday, November 2nd, I'm in the chat room talking to Chris and Cherie. They bring me on. And I notice in the chat room, when you're just a guest and you're talking, it's different than when you're running the show and you have to pay attention to the timer and everything else and make sure think you're not gonna step over your breaks and blah 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 blah. So it's a little bit easier. So I'm in the chat room paying attention, and I had been messaged this too by the person, but they admitted this in the chat room, so some of the chatters can back up what I'm about to say. Merce saved somebody, even from beyond. This one of my listeners, new, old, I don't remember how long she's been listening. This person lost their spouse, and they were feeling very down and depressed. And from what I got from what they had said, they were on the verge of killing themselves, pretty much. They were that depressed because they lost their spouse about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And believe me, I'll get into this in the second hour. My perspective on things has drastically changed. I would not wish the lesson that I've had to go through to gain this philosophical perspective on anyone. It's the roughest thing I've had to go through in my life. But the listener had said that after reading what I wrote about Merce, not only were they inspired by like how I was handling it, but that's not really what inspired them. What inspired them was how she lived her life. And because she actually walked that walk, this woman was brought from the lowest point that you could be at, like just ready to give up and quit. And Merce rescued her from that and brought her back. And now she wants to, she wants to go out and she wants to change her perspective. Because I put in that message that it's about changing your perspective. It's not just about saying it, or maybe even going out and buying somebody a meal or something once in a while. It's about actually changing your whole perspective on life and how you interact with everything and everyone around you. And that was so profound to her that it saved her. So even from beyond this mortal realm where we all currently exist, in the next dimension, my wife, my beautiful Mercedita, saved another human being because she inspired them. I couldn't make this up. That's powerful, okay? That's extremely, extremely, extremely powerful. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. I don't think there's any other words to describe it. Okay, she saved another human being, and she's not even in this physical realm anymore. Okay? She's not even on this physical plane with us, and yet she was still able to save another human being. So I challenge you all to do even a tenth of that. And she didn't run around with leotards on and a cape. She wore yoga pants quite often. I know, ha ha ha, it's a bit of a funny because she was a yoga instructor. But she didn't run around in a superhero costume with a cape. She just changed her perspective on life and lived her life to be that change that she sought to see in the world. Her favorite quote was, "Be the change you wish to see in the world," by Gandhi. And instead of just saying that, putting the bumper sticker on the car, maybe getting a tattoo because it looks cool. No. Merce actually lived her life in that perspective. So now I challenge you all out there to do the same. Think you can do it?
This is Sparta!
Let's see if you're up to the challenge. I think you all are. So did Merce. She believed in all of you. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. Hour 1 up. Hour 2 is coming up in 3 short minutes. Do not go anywhere. We'll be back with more of the Legacy of Merce. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back with hour number 2 here on tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I am your host, Popeye from FederalJack.com. It is November 14th, 2014. Hour number 2 of the show that I have titled The Legacy of Merce, discussing my beautiful wife, my best friend, my soulmate, as we used to say, my puzzle piece. I find that people are inspired by hearing how she lived her life. And if she can have this profound effect and change things for the better, then that's a silver lining in an otherwise horrible situation that I would never wish upon anyone. It's hard to explain, and I'll get into this in a minute, but before I forget, I did promise I would do this, so I don't want to get sidetracked because I'm going to get into some deep stuff. So, for the new listeners that don't know how to use the website, federaljack.com. Federaljack.com is my website. If you go there, all of my shows, going back to my first shows and any special broadcasts I've done, are there in an archive section under Down the Rabbit Hole. It's very self-explanatory. You can see it. There's a downloadable section. If you know me and you're on Facebook and you're just tuning in and you're not sure how to use it, just message me and I will take care of it. Message me on Facebook and I'll send you links and stuff. And I'm going to eventually shoot a video over the next few weeks for YouTube with a screen capture software program that I have that I'll show everybody how to use the archive section. But it's pretty easy. It's all set up pretty easy to understand. But if you go to federaljack.com, there's an archive section for my radio show, Down the Rabbit Hole, and you'll see all the older shows and stuff there. Now, I know it's kind of confusing to get in touch with me because our emails are always, over the course of time, I've had a bazillion of them. So here is one very simple email that I set up a couple months back. It's the one I use for the radio show now. Very easy if you want to get in touch with me. You ready? Popeye, DTRH, which is obviously down the rabbit hole. It's very easy to remember. It's the first letter of each word. So, Popeye, Delta, Tango, Romeo, Hotel, at gmail.com. Popeye, DTRH, at gmail.com. If you're interested and you want to get in contact with me or whatever, or you need to update your information, there it is. And for those of you that are not sure, yes, the show airs normally Tuesday to Friday, 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time, or 7 to 9 Pacific. And it's live on the Truth Frequency Radio Network, truthfrequencyradio.com. There's archives there. I keep all the archives on Federal Jack, and the reason why I tell people to go there if you want to hear all my shows is because I didn't always do radio on Truth Frequency. So older stuff or stuff that I might not have done on air is there too. So all of my stuff is there. But check out the archive section over on Truth Frequency. Sign up over there. Support Truth Frequency. Just an awesome network. And then you can get access to all the other great shows on the network too. So anyway, I wanted to throw that out there because it is important. I never plug my archive section of the website, and people are always like, how do I listen to older shows? And I'm just horrible at plugging stuff like that because I'm constantly focusing on the information. So I figured I'd throw that out there. So this new philosophical perspective that I have on life, I want to share some of this with you. Because if I can help you guys see some stuff without, if I can give you the knowledge without you being forced to go through this, and eventually you're going to go through this in your life, but hopefully to be when you're much older and not at a young age like myself, because young widowers like myself are actually in the minority. Interesting statistics. Things you find out at 3 o'clock in the morning when you can't sleep anymore. But I digress. So, there's a few things that I want to touch on because I have this drastically different understanding of things, a more enlightened understanding of many things. The first one is fear. I thought I understood what it meant to actually have absence of fear. And like I said earlier in hour one, I mean, people experience fear and stuff like that, but it's real. It's not like something you can just throw out. But at the same time, I have this unique perspective of I don't feel that feeling. That receptor has been turned off or maxed out. My worst fear was losing Merce. And now that I've experienced it, there's nothing that frightens me. People that have lost a spouse that's their best friend will understand that. Gwen Caldwell, good friend of mine, fellow radio show host here. Love you, Gwen. I'm sure you're probably tuned in. And Gwen's awesome. She's been there for me. She's just a great person altogether. But she knows exactly what I'm talking about. Your perspective on fear changes drastically. When you've faced your biggest fear in the world, you don't really have other fears anymore. Everything else is a joke. Very interesting about fear. But the reason I bring that up is not to be like, oh, I'm fearless now. What I see is a world filled with fear, and as someone who just does not have that, even the capability of even plugging into that anymore, it's very strange. I have this new perspective on it because it's almost like I'm not affected in any way by it. And when you're not affected in any way by it, it's interesting how you look at it. There really is, the only way I could describe what it feels like. It's amazing how liberating not having that level of fear is to your mind and to the way you see things. I guess is the only way to describe it. It's like removing a set of. It's almost like I didn't have the a set of blinders on, but it's almost like removing a filter, like a lens. And you now see more because it blocked you. The fear, even if you didn't constantly, oh my God, everybody has fears, right? Mine was losing Merce, and when that set of goggles that tint off your lenses has been removed, it's very interesting how you see the same place that you've been. Right, it's just like when you take the goggles off, the blinders off, and you put on the Hoffman sunglasses. Right, for the first time, the glasses. For those of you that don't know what I'm referencing, go watch the movie "They Live." For the newer listeners, or some of Merce's friends or family that might be tuning in for the first time, go watch the movie "They Live," and you'll understand the Hoffman sunglasses are the sunglasses that the people in the movie wear, and they can actually see what's going on. So even if you've had the Hoffman sunglasses on, it's still different. You have this. You still. I mean, unless you've gone through this experience, then it's different. Then you understand what I'm talking about. But this. It's like I guess the only way, like I said, the best way to describe it would be like removing. Like if you had goggles and you had like different color lenses on them to see different spectrums of light. It's like one of the ones that was blocking certain spectrums has been removed, and I just see the world drastically different now. I don't know how else to describe it other than that, but I bring it up because there's so much fear out there. And so much anger and hatred. And I got to tell you, to use a personal example to break through it, a lot of that feeds into you fighting and arguing with your loved one and your spouse, right? I mean, if you're married, you have fights. You might hate on one another, push each other's buttons. That's what. If you're really best friends, you know how to piss each other off. And a lot of that anger that you might be feeling, even if it's something stupid, whatever, it could be a very justifiable reason. The point is, a lot of that is fed from this constant fear emotion and the vibe that you're in, your perspective of things. You're not in love, you're in protection mode. I've talked about growth versus protection. Again, this is all in my archives for the newer listeners, people just tuning in. You can go back and learn a lot about this. It's the difference between living in the fear frequency and living in the love frequency. So you're tuning into that fear vibe already. You're already amped up. You're anxious. Now you start to fight with your loved one. You say stupid things, whatever. You hold grudges. You're angry. Maybe some of it's based on fear, perhaps. Maybe you're afraid this person could do better than you. Maybe you're whatever. There's multitudes of different reasons. You're projecting your own anger at yourself, at them, whatever. The point is, this type of stuff. And everybody, I'm just throwing some examples out there to try to get people to stay on track. The point is, when I lost my wife, I realized that all of that stuff that I was mad at, little stupid things here and there, that went away. And the only thing I felt was love. The only thing I could remember and feel for her is love. There's no anger towards her for anything. I mean, I tried. I realized this, and I sat and I tried to think about the little things that she would do that would piss me off here or there or whatever. I couldn't find an ounce of anger. It's interesting. So what do I take from that? Well, on a small scale, and I'll do the micro and the macro, as above, so below, law of correspondence, but on the small scale, we'll start with personal level, because that's where all change comes from, right? I realized that if there was no anger towards her, that means all the stupid things that we fought about here and there, because every couple does, you'll argue, bicker, any little thing that you would argue or piss and moan about women, you piss and moan about guys leaving the seat up, guys, you piss and moan about your wife putting her cold feet on your ankles or your legs. You won't be mad about that stuff if that person is gone. In fact, you'll miss all of that stuff. You'd give anything to have that back. You don't have anger towards them. All that goes away. Widows and widowers who will hear this broadcast will understand what I'm talking about. You'll have a drastically different perspective on things. And I don't have any anger or malice or anything towards I never did, but I mean, even if you're angry at your spouse for something stupid, you know what I mean? That's all gone. I can't even remember it. And what does that tell me? That means that the only thing that really mattered was my love for her and her love for me. So that means that the only thing that truly matters is love. Not fear, not hatred, not anger. That's all window dressing to distract you from love. It's to keep you in that fear vibe, right? So if I apply that now, if I apply that to my personal life, maybe you'll remember that next time you go to have an argument with your significant other or something over something stupid. And you realize that stuff, that anger that you have for them, maybe you start to yell at them and you're a dick. Well, that anger, it goes away if they're gone. So it really doesn't mean anything. It's window dressing. The only thing that really matters is the love that you had, the bond between your souls, the fact that you love that person. That's the power. That's the most powerful thing. That's the only thing that matters, not the anger or the fear or the hatred or any of that. And if you apply that on a bigger scale, then that means that their fear, their being the powers that shouldn't be, right now we're getting to the conspiratorial aspect of things, their control doesn't mean a damn thing. Their fear is all, if you can look past it, if you can stand up and look through it, you will understand that it has gone and only you will remain. Yes, I'm quoting part of the litany against fear because I have actually lived the litany against fear. Okay? I have faced my biggest fear, and I have come out on the other side, and I am still standing here talking to you today. You need to do the same things. If you live your life in that perspective of not living in fear, okay, that's a huge step. That's a huge, huge step. And that breaks down the control. So, as above, so below, the law of correspondence. What you do in the micro affects the macro. So what you do in your personal life affects the world, whether it be negative or for the good. So if you do bad, retarded, stupid things in your personal life, it's going to have an effect on the world. How many times has your family said to you, if you constantly did things bad when you were younger, whatever, and again, no judging or anything, but I'm saying if you did stupid things, I'm sure at one point or another you heard someone in your family say to you, don't you understand your behavior is affecting other people and affecting people around you? They were probably just referencing themselves, but that's a very profound statement because your behavior is affecting everybody else around you, whether you even realize it or not. The energy you give off is affecting everybody around you. As above, so below. That's what the Freemasons mean when they say that's the law of correspondence. That's not their little motto that they came up with. They borrowed they use it, but it's the law of correspondence. What you do in the micro will affect the macro. So you want the solution to the New World Order agenda? You make the people that are pushing it irrelevant. So you have to be in that state of mind, in that perspective, in order for that method of control to work. But if you're not thinking in that perspective, if you elevate yourself to a higher level, and if all of humanity does that, then this very small, tiny group of individuals becomes irrelevant. And we move on. And if they don't want to move on, well, then they get mowed over. Humanity's enlightenment will be like a train, and they're on the tracks. And if they don't get out of the way or get on the train, they're going to get run over by it. You want to defeat them? Change your perspective. Change the frequency that you tune into. The universe operates on two frequencies, fear or love. I've talked about this before with I've had Dr. Bruce Lipton's audio clips on. I haven't had the chance to actually interview Dr. Bruce Lipton, but when I get back on my game, I'll get to that. But I've played audio clips of him. Our bodies operate in growth or protection, fear or love. If you're tuned into that fear frequency constantly, you're not going to be able to grow. In order for you to grow and be able to fix the problem, we have to get out of the fear frequency. Being in it, knowing that there's a problem and still being in that frequency and putting out that vibe is still being part of the problem. Okay, you need to unplug from that and change your whole perspective. Change the whole perspective. Flip the script, as they would say. That's the most powerful thing you can do. You want the most powerful expression of freedom you could have? Unplug from their fear. Take that IV of fear and unplug it from your arm and say no. Okay? That's what that means when Neo stands at the end of the hallway in the first Matrix and they shoot him and he drops dead, and then Trinity kisses him and she says, you can't be dead because I love you, now get up. And he gets up and he looks and they raise their guns and he says, no. That's what you need to do. You need to put your hand up and say, no. Unplug from the fear. Stop being afraid. You change your whole perspective on things and you'd be surprised how fast things change drastically, not only in your personal life. Again, everybody wants the answer. What's the answer to the dark New World Order agenda? Oh my God, these people are trying to build a one world government, all these shady groups, and we need to do this, and we need reforms, and we need to vote, and we need... No, it's all window dressing. True solutions to the problems will come about after you change your perspective. As Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it. Do you understand what I mean when I say that? I'll repeat that. You can't solve a problem with the same level of thinking that created it. That means we need to enlighten ourselves and move up, not down. That's why they have you tune into TV and all this crap. We literally live in idiocracy. They have to keep your mind occupied. They don't want you thinking about any of this. They need you to be afraid, because when you're afraid, you don't think clearly, and you'll do whatever. Protect me. Oh, government. Oh, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Ebola. Oh, my God, I'm scared. You'll do whatever they want. Like V, in the movie V for Vendetta said, if you go about 3/4 of the way through the movie, he's talking to the police. He's disguised as an old man, and he's telling them about how it was actually the government that pulled off this terrorist plot, which led to the police state that they live in the movie. And he says, he goes through the details of the plan, but he says the genius of it wasn't even all that. It was the fear, because through the fear, they controlled everyone. And that's how they control all of you. So changing your perspective like Merce and living your life in the love frequency, she lived her life in the love frequency. She was a warrior. My angel is in Valhalla for sure. I guarantee it. She is walking around sporting some pretty badass female warrior armor right now. Okay, she was a warrior for truth and light. She actually lived her life in that perspective to change things, because she knew that if she put that energy out there, that she could change things. She could actually change the world and make it a better place. Not just, like I said, going out and throwing a dollar bill at a problem, or going out and maybe perhaps buying somebody food, which she did. She did food. She gave clothes to homeless people and stuff. But not only would she do that, and she did things like she sat down and tried to get people to understand how homeless people were. And that sounds crazy, but people would, we'd maybe buy, you get cynical sometimes, you see it all day. In fact, one time I had made a comment, there was a guy who walked by, he was talking to himself, and I made a very prickish comment. I'll leave it at that. And not to him out loud, like making fun of him, but I said it to her. We were people watching. And we used to go back and forth and do that with each other. You know what she said? She turned around and she said to me, how do you know that guy doesn't have some sort of mental problem? Like, why would you instantly make fun of him? I expect more of you. And she was right. She was right. She made me look at it like, oh, well, wow. She had a way of forcing the mirror up in your face. Another thing I loved about her, because I do that to people. But she did it to me. She even, she called me to the carpet when I needed it. That's being the change, because she made me think on a different level. That's how you change things. The powers that shouldn't be, get you to think in the fear frequency. They get you to be afraid of every little thing. They're changing how you think. I'm not trying to mind control you. They are. All I'm trying to do is get you back to thinking straight and normal. And with your own brain. With your own free thoughts. And that's what Merce would have wanted. I know that's what she wants wherever she is. She doesn't want you to give in to fear and succumb to that. She wants you to face your fears. She wants you to stand up and look at your fears and be like, okay, and stand your ground anyway. That's what she would expect. Why do you think I'm back on air 1 month later? You think this is easy? It's not. But I know my wife. And I know what she would expect of me. She didn't fall in love with me because I was a wimp. She didn't fall in love with me because I would melt in the face of adversity. She believed in all of you, and I do too. We'll be right back. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Final segment of tonight's live edition of Down the Rabbit Hole. I hope that you are inspired by hearing me talk about my wife and how she lived her life. She was the most, and she still is and always will be, the most amazing person I've ever met. I've met some really cool individuals in my lifetime, some people that I'm proud and honored to say that I am friends with, and that I got a chance to know, but none can compare. Not one of them. All my cool friends that are in this, none of them could compare to Merce. And I want you guys to be inspired by her. And I know that if you're even exposed to 1/1000th of her awesomeness, which is about what I've put out there, only about 1/1000th of her awesomeness, that should be more than enough to solve the problems in this world, because that's how awesome and filled with love and light she was and still is wherever she is. There's something else I want to get into, and it's in the same vein of, it goes along with everything that I've been talking about. And if you hear any weird noises in the background, it's because I have 3 furry children, okay? And when I would be on air, Merce would go and she would mind the 3 furry little children. But unfortunately, the 3 furry children, well, I have 4 of them. Monster, hangs out in the office with me and just snores in the background. But the other 3 furry children are my cats, and right now they're being like teenagers and getting into a ton of trouble. So I just had to go regulate while I was chatting with you. Anyway, so the thing that I wanted to get into is communication. Communication is key, ladies and gentlemen, on so many levels that the only way to break it down for you is to explain to you how I see it. On so many levels, the blockage of communication will destroy utterly and completely, with so many different things. Whether it be a personal relationship, whether it be your car, your home computer, the country, or the human body. Communication and the breakdown of it will destroy all of them. How so? Now, I use these examples so that way it's very simple and easy for everybody to understand, not only just some people. So, let's look at each one of those individual things. Communication. In your car, if your computer is not communicating properly with other components in your engine, your car is not going to run properly. It'll break down. You could possibly cause some serious damage. Your computer. Very simple. If a program can't communicate with the hard drive, doesn't work, right? If you can't plug your computer into the internet, you can't listen to the show. You can't get online. If you don't have access to the internet, whether it's Wi-Fi or plugging it directly in, you can't get on. That's communication. If a radio show host can't call into his network via Skype or whatever other medium they use, he can't do that show from his home studio, can he? What about the country? If the country doesn't communicate, which we don't because everybody's afraid of each other, oh look, there's fear again. What happens? If the country does not communicate, what happens? The country will fall apart. Just like the human body. If the human body doesn't communicate, what happens? You have the autoimmune system start attacking itself. Diseases like lupus, cancer, tumors start to form. That's kind of an odd thing, the whole process of itself. Look into that. But you get illness, you get sickness in your physical body. What happens if your brain is not communicating with the rest of your body? Think about it. Communication. On every level, it is one of the most important things. And yet we take it for granted every day. Many people don't even engage in it. They'd rather not talk to their neighbor. Yeah, I'm not really worried about communication. Not that important. Really? You don't think so, huh? You don't think if your brain told your heart to beat, you think it would still continuously beat, or do you think eventually it would just stop? Same thing with the other organs in your body. What about the country? You think if we don't talk to one another, you think we're going to stay strong and be able to weather any storm? Do you think if we don't get to know our neighbors, if we don't work with one another, look past our differences? Wow, look past our differences. There's a novel concept, huh? Try to look past our differences. There's so many that are programmed into us. Kids don't understand that stuff. They don't know black, white, maybe boy, girl, but not even that really. They don't know culture, race, religion, political persuasion, or sexual preference isn't even a thing at that age, so all that stuff is programmed in later on. Our biases of those things. How we judge one another and keep each other locked in separate little compartments. Oh, you're a this, you're a that. Does it really matter? Color? Does it really matter? Sexual preference? Political beliefs? Does that really matter? Or is that just window dressing? Maybe what really matters is being better to each other. Maybe what matters is actually being good humans to each other. Does it really matter what your car looks like as opposed to my car? Because that's what our bodies are, ladies and gentlemen. They're just cars. Our essence, our being is in this vehicle. I have tattoos all over me. Some people might think I look like a thug or a biker. Miscreant. It's just my paint job to my car. You get to hang out with the driver on the inside. You get to know me a little bit. You like me. Usually. Some people don't, whatever. All of our cars operate the same way on the inside. We all bleed the same blood, breathe the same air. Doesn't matter what color you are. Doesn't matter where you grew up. Doesn't matter who your parents were. It doesn't. It's all window dressing. It's all programmed into us, the biases and stuff, over the course of time. And I've gone into detail why. I'm not going to sidetrack myself, but the point is, it's programmed into us over the course of time. Go in, you want to look into details, go listen to my shows in the archives about controlling humanity and stuff like that. You'll see them, like all the shows are always aptly titled, so you can easily figure out, have a good guesstimate of what it's about. So, and the ones that are posted on YouTube and that I post on Federal Jack itself always have a write-up. So, and eventually get caught up with the other stuff. Anyway, you can go look all that stuff up in the archives. So, communication, okay, is key. Because if you're afraid of somebody because they're black or they're white or they're Latino or they're Asian or they have tattoos or they're gay or they're straight or they're Christian or they're Muslim or they're from friggin' I don't know Ireland or Scotland. I'm throwing that out there as a little side joke to my buddies over at the KBS Kev Baker show, my good friends. It doesn't matter where you're from, who you are. We're all the same. Okay, we're all human beings. If you look at this on a universal cosmic level, we're like the laughing joke. Okay, the rest, everybody's like, how come we haven't seen aliens come down and just talk to us yet? Because they're all in high school and we're in kindergarten. Do you go hang out to the high schoolers when you were in high school? Did you go hang out with the kindergarten kids? No, you didn't. Okay, you didn't go have coffee or beers with them, right? Well, that's the way the rest of the universe is. We have to grow up. We're still in infancy. I mean, we fight over the frigging sandbox, over whose God is better. We kill each other over pieces of land and over whose God is better. When, at the end of the day, whatever creative force is out there, whatever your version of him is, and I don't even want to say him because, again, that's anthropomorphizing it, whatever version of that creative energy or force it is, in your opinion, it's still it's the same creative energy force that's out there that created all of us. Okay, so you're killing each other over the same thing. Duh. We argue over the stupidest things, and a lot of it is because there's communication breakdown, and there's different levels. Again, once you change your perspective and you look at these same problems, then you'd actually see the problem more for what it is, and we'd be able to come up with a more sensible solution to these problems. And that's a whole different aspect of just breaking down each problem, in and of itself, and giving it the proper time that it's due. But the perspective change itself is what is needed, okay? The communication, the being willing to talk to your neighbor, your friends, your loved ones, whatever. It doesn't matter. You have to do that. You have to be the change you wish to see in the world. So if you want to see on all these different levels this communication grow, then you have to go out and do it in your personal life, and you have to do it and put that out into the universe, and then it will change. Otherwise, things are going to stay the same. Even if you know about the bad stuff and you sit and you could know about it and have a blog, but constantly just blogging about all the bad things that are going on isn't solving the problem. You're just sitting and bitching about the bad things. You're not actually going out and changing your perspective. And actually what you don't realize you're doing is you're putting yourself in that fear frequency. And you're keeping yourself almost to a certain degree locked into that without even realizing it. And then you are emanating that to a certain extent, to a large extent. And you don't even realize that you're doing it. Because you think you're free, because you're awake. And you don't even realize you're doing it. I'm not criticizing anybody. I'm telling you the way it is. You have to change your whole perspective. You have to not live in that fear. Okay? Your whole perspective has to change. Your love of money and things needs to go away. Merce didn't love physical objects. She had great taste. My wife had the best taste. She's the one that taught me interior design. She's the one that taught me about curtains and all that stuff. I was a guy, typical guy before I met her, and she explained to me about this stuff over the years. I was just like, whatever, you want to put black curtains up? I don't care. Curtains? What are curtains? How about blinds? That's fine for me. I didn't care about that stuff. My wife had impeccable taste. She knew fashion, but physical stuff, she didn't need that. She used to say to me, I don't need Coach bags and stuff. I have you. That's all she wanted. Somebody that loved her and didn't judge her and understood her and knew her. That's all she wanted. She was happy going out to the local diner with me for a $35 or $40 dinner. That was was a big deal. That was date night. She didn't want purses. She didn't want bags. Yeah, I'm sure maybe if we had money, she wouldn't have minded shopping here or there, but we didn't have the money, so she didn't need it. She used to say, it's just stuff. Can't take it with you when you die. She's right. She didn't care about man-made stuff. She wasn't in love with things. The love of things needs to be replaced with the love of humanity and the love of oneself again. You need to learn to love yourself. Again, you can't fix the world, ladies and gentlemen, unless you truly love yourself. So even if you're out there in the world running around trying to fix the world and save the world, if you haven't come to peace with your own inner demons, if you haven't fixed that inside your own self, inside your own head, then you are not going to be as effective as you should be. Okay? That is the fact. You need to learn to love yourself before you could go out and learn to love anybody else. Look at yourself in the mirror. Self-affirmation. Tell yourself you love yourself. Tell yourself you're a good person. Go look in the mirror and tell yourself that you are a good person. Do it for 2 or 3 minutes a day. Look at yourself in the eyes. It's one of the hardest things people ever have to do. They look themselves in the eyes. Look at yourself in the eyes and tell yourself you're a good person. Give yourself that self-support if no one else will do it for you. Okay? And then once you actually start to love yourself, then go out and I challenge you to start doing that for other people. Be there for somebody. Just be there. Just listen to them. Don't try to fix their problem. Just listen. That goes back to communication. And one of the other little things I wanted to throw out before I forget, because I'm running out of time. The last part of communication. One of the most important parts is your relationship with your spouse. If you do not communicate with your spouse, ladies and gentlemen, your relationship will die. Just like all the other examples that I showed you, how the lack of communication. The same thing in your relationship. So, ladies, it's really simple. Men, it's real simple. Guys, stop trying to fix every little thing. I'll give you a couple little quick examples. Some free advice. Save you some therapy. Some free therapeutic advice for you and your spouse. Guys, don't try to fix every little simple thing that a woman comes to you with. Just shut up and listen. Let them talk. Sometimes that's all they want. They don't want you to fix the problem. They just want you to shut up and listen to them bitch for 15 minutes. Let them. Women, don't play games. If you want something, be straightforward with the dude and just tell him. Guys don't operate like that. So they won't see it. They're not on the same, we work with two different, women and men are on kind of two different playing fields when it comes to that, how they operate. And although we balance each other out, which is the truth, you know what I mean. So be more straightforward. Whatever your relationship is, whoever you're with, be open and communicate with that person. Talk to them. Tell them your fears. Tell them what obviously you have to, I would preface that with, make sure that this person is obviously, you didn't just meet them yesterday, right? But if you're in a relationship and you want it to last, then you have to communicate with one another. Don't be afraid to talk to that person. One of the best parts about my relationship with Merce was the fact that we could hang out with each other and be content with just hanging out with each other, okay? And that was fine with us. Even if it was doing absolutely nothing. I urge you to not waste the time that you have with your spouse. You don't know how much time you have left. Something drastic could happen tomorrow or an hour from now. You don't know. It's amazing how life comes up and punches you in the stomach when you least expect it. So don't waste your time with that person. Merce and I had a rule. Every time one of us would leave or go to sleep, even if we were pissed off at each other. I mean, there were times it was like sarcastic, but we always said I love you to each other. Even if we were arguing, we could be arguing and she'd be like, yeah, I love you, whatever, I'm going to work, goodbye, and walk out the door. And slam the door. The reason we did that, and it was something that I had pushed her for, and I kind of instituted it when we first realized how we felt about each other. Because I had lost my mom, and, I only knew that my mom was sick for like 2 weeks, and then she passed away. She had kept it hidden from everybody. So I said to her, look, I don't ever want you, if something drastic ever happened, whatever, I don't want you to, ever wonder, say something happened to me, I don't want you to ever wonder how I felt about you. So I'd always tell her I loved her, and she did the same thing for me. We always told each other we loved each other, even if we were pissed, just so the other one knew it, because it was important. I'm lucky in the fact that the day that she had her asthma attack, I was able to earlier in the day, we were spending time together, and I was holding her hand. We were laying in bed just watching TV and taking the day off. And she made me breakfast in bed. She made pancakes, and we sat and ate pancakes, and I held her hand and told her that I loved her and that she was my best friend. And I had the opportunity to do so before this happened, before my world came crumbling down around my ears, so to speak. Don't waste the time you have with the one you love. As I said, you realize that the stuff that you would get angry about in the past is nothing but window dressing. I don't have any anger towards my wife. All I have is love. Which means that if all I feel towards her is love, then that means that anger really was just window dressing. It doesn't mean anything. It holds no value, no weight, no anything. And as I said, if you expand that to the outside world, for all of you that are into what's going on and aware and awake, it's the same thing. Their fear, their hatred, their anger, it's all window dressing. It means nothing. The only thing that's actually really important out there is the love frequency, the love of your fellow man, the love of your friends, the love of your family, the caring about your fellow people. Okay, that's what's important. Putting that energy out there, being a better person. That's what's important. What's not important is being afraid, being locked up in your house, being scared that the Bin Ladens of the world, or the ISISes of the world, or the Ebolas, or whatever other fear-creating mess they throw at you, okay? You have to stop buying and feeding into that fear frequency and putting that out there. Because if you put into that, if you constantly focus on that, even if you're trying to wake people up, if you constantly focus on being in that frequency, then you're going to emanate that frequency itself, and you're going to be living in that frequency. And if you live in that frequency, then you're not being a positive change. You're being a change. But I don't think that's the change that you wish to see in the world. Okay, I think that's the change that perhaps other people might wish to see in the world. So if you want to be a positive change, it's about change of perspective, ladies and gentlemen. It's about literally changing the way you think and how you operate in your life and how you do things. Because if you do not, okay, things aren't going to change. They are going to stay dark. The world looks dark and scary right now, right? Well, the only way to make this place a little bit brighter, especially since my wife is no longer here. She was a beacon of light in a sea of darkness. But her light hasn't gone out. Okay, that's how powerful Merce is, that her light is still shining. Even from the other side, you can still see it. Okay, that's how bright she is. And what we need to do, even though some of that light isn't here in this realm anymore, it's our responsibility to burn brighter in her honor and be inspired by her and make this place a lot less darker. We need to burn brighter to make up for that loss of her light. And then even more so on top of it. That's what she would want. She wouldn't want us to just make up for that light that was lost. She would want us to make up for that light and then pump it out 100 times more. Because that's the way she was. That's the way she operated. That's the way she lived her life. My beautiful Merce was the change that she wished to see in this world. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I challenge every single one of you to go be the change that you wish to see in the world. Change your perspective. Remember, communication. Unplug from the fear frequency. Tune back into the love frequency. Look up my archives on that stuff. Look up Dr. Bruce Lipton and more. Don't be afraid.
This is Sparta!
If for no other reason, for Merce, go be the change you wish to see in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I will catch you all again next week. I love you all. I have faith in you all. Merce did. The solutions to our problems are an inside job. Go be the heroes I know you all are.